This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about how Bitcoin is actually nothing. Bitcoin doesn't have a leader. He disappeared back in 2011, never sold any of his coins. Bitcoin doesn't have a headquarters. It doesn't have employees. It doesn't have a central location for operations. There's no physical property, and people can come and go. You can plug into the network like a miner. You can unplug. You can run a full node. You don't have to run a full node. You can buy Bitcoin. You can sell Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't care, and no one controls it. Not even China controls it. People used to panic about this, that China had the power to destroy Bitcoin. And one of the great things about recent news is now China has banned financial institutions from using Bitcoin. China has basically shut down all the miners, and they are relocating or having their equipment confiscated, possibly. We're not sure about the latter. And what happened to Bitcoin? Bitcoin went down about 50%, and it's still trading well above where many of you bought it, below 10,000. It's still up sharply, as you can see, over the past 12 months. Bitcoin has no leader because Satoshi Nakamoto sent his final email April 26, 2011, saying that he had moved on to other projects. Meanwhile, his coins have never moved, and he has never sold them. And this is really perhaps one of the most generous gifts that anyone has given humanity. And Satoshi had this tremendous humility that really contrasts with people like Vitalik Buterin and Charles Hoskinson and the Ripple XRP execs. This is the difference between a pump and dump scam and the real thing, decentralized currency. So Satoshi left, but Ethereum still has all these phases. Ethereum has a foundation. Ethereum has someone who has a bully pulpit like Vitalik Buterin. Satoshi Nakamoto no longer has the bully pulpit, and he controls nothing. If you're finding this video helpful so far, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button, and maybe share this video with a few friends, especially friends who are into other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin, and they don't really understand the space. So as we said, Bitcoin has no leader, no employees, no physical property, etc. The reason for this is that each of these, the more of these properties you have, the more you have an attack surface. They can be used to capture the institution, to capture the currency, to shut it down, or to otherwise manipulate it. When you have a founder who's still alive and active and leading the charge when it comes to development, if it turns out that he's dead or that there's a rumor that he's dead, you get a wipeout in the currency. It'd be very easy for the US government or another government to apply extreme pressure to Vitalik Buterin to really do whatever they want him to do. Meanwhile, Ethereum still has all these vulnerabilities. It's highly dependent on Amazon Web Services, AWS, highly dependent on Infura, so much so that when Infura goes down, you can't even get your Ethereum off the exchanges. Meanwhile, if you're a company like Ripple Labs and you're a bunch of scammers like them, you end up getting sued by the SEC. Now, you can say whatever you want about Bitcoin, but one of the very interesting things is if the SEC wanted to sue Bitcoin, if this really is a bubble and a scam and a pump and dump, tell me who they're going to sue. There's no one to sue. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. They could try to sue him, but no one even knows if he's still alive. There's no corporation to sue. There's no headquarters to go to. You can go to Ethereum's various headquarters. You can go to Cardano's various headquarters or Ripple Lab headquarters. There's nowhere to go with Bitcoin. And you cannot sue me. They cannot sue you for using open source software on your computer. Especially in the US, software is protected under the First Amendment, and especially open source software is. I'll link to this article. You can read more about it there. A lot of cryptocurrencies and their founders, and the fact that they still have a founder who's alive and has to come out and say this, I'm always amused when there's a founder who says my currency is decentralized, and then he uses words like my or the currency that I invented, etc. It's not decentralized if you still have a leader who's in charge, and just saying that it is does not make it so. Or you can be one of these guys who says, oh, our crypto is currently decentralized, but we're moving rapidly towards true decentralization, and after a couple of hard forks next year, I promise you it really is going to be decentralized. This is the kind of thing Hoskinson is always saying with Cardano. But what they don't tell you is, by the way, I still own 30% of it that I printed up for myself and my friends and my family and my private foundation, and I'm going to keep dumping it on you in the meantime. And even once I tell you it's decentralized, I'm going to keep dumping on you. Again, you can see what people say, you can see what they do. Satoshi has never taken profits on his position. He's never sold his Bitcoin. This is extreme anonymity and extreme, I would say, extreme humility as well. So Bitcoin doesn't have a leader, it doesn't have a headquarters, or it's not a corporation, it doesn't have physical property that it owns. It is minimalistic. It is the simplest form of economic truth and economic beauty. It's the bare minimum that you need. And the blockchain itself is not meant to run all these smart contracts. It's not meant to store a lot of useless data there. It's the bare minimum. And in that way, it's able to be more resistant to attacks. Bitcoin is also the economic constant that can be used to measure everything else in the economy. You can denominate houses and stocks and money growth and GDP in Bitcoin, and it's not manipulated. It's not like the ruler in the sense of a 12-inch ruler or something like that, a measuring tape that people use. So when you use the US dollar or any other fiat currency to measure things, you're using something that's not a constant. The US dollar, the money supply is constantly changing, usually just increasing. And so it's like you're measuring things with a measuring tape that's constantly changing in size. And this leads to lots of distortions. It leads to lots of incorrect motivations and incentives. In the same way that the meter is currently defined as the length of the path traveled in light by a vacuum in so many seconds, which I list here, and it used to be defined as various things like the distance. It was something like the distance from London to the North Pole, and it's been refined and made more precise. Bitcoin is measured by its scarcity. There are only 21 million Bitcoin. If you own 1% of that or 0.001% of that, your ownership of that will always be the same percentage-wise. The Bitcoin cap will never be increased, as we talked about before. And as such, Bitcoin becomes this golden ruler in the sense of a measuring tape that can be used to measure everything else, in the same way that in physics you have various constants like c, which is the speed of light. A lot of people misunderstand the minimalism of Bitcoin, and rather than seeing it as a positive, they see it as a negative. They say, well, Bitcoin can't do this, it can't do that. The reason for this is that everything can be built using layer 2 solutions. The blockchain itself needs to be secure in order for everything to scale on top of that in a sort of layered money sort of way. And this is the problem that Ethereum is running into. The fees are too high. They're having to move to a completely new consensus mechanism, which is proof of stake. And it's a complete mess. It's extremely experimental, and the wheels could come off at any time. So people who don't understand Bitcoin, who just read headlines about it and clickbait, they don't understand that Bitcoin's lack of features, lack of leader, etc., and the fact that it's just code and has no intrinsic value, that this is actually a plus. It's a positive, not a negative. They also misunderstand that a lot of modern companies, for example, Facebook obviously has a leader and is a corporation, has headquarters and has buildings and physical assets, tangible assets. But Facebook, essentially, the value there is really just ones and zeros. It's also the social network. And it's the various network effects that protect the business. You can't start your own Facebook because there already is one. You can just copy the software, but you won't be able to get your friends and family on there because everyone's already on Facebook. Bitcoin is also a social network. It's a social consensus. You can come and go. No one puts a gun to your head the way they do with fiat currencies. I'm forced by the IRS to use US dollars. I'm forced by the US to use US dollars in many situations. And I try not to, but whatever country you're in, you have to interact with the fiat currency. Bitcoin is not coercive. It doesn't force you to use it. And you can always tell the difference between, if you're being forced to use something, it's probably going to be inferior quality than something that is just beautiful and that people are free to choose. And you don't have to force anyone to choose it. So Bitcoin is a network of people, and it's a social consensus. It's a set of rules that are enforced by the full nodes that run the Bitcoin core software. The miners are not in charge. The full nodes are in charge. They run the software and they verify each block and make sure all the consensus rules are being followed. None of them will ever agree to raise the maximum supply of 21 million because they'd just be diluting their own holdings. Bitcoin is free. Anyone can download the software. It's free open source software. You can look at the software. You can see if there are any bugs. You can see if there are any backdoors. And the software spreads from computer to computer as the mind virus spreads. And many of you are watching this video because you have been infected by the mind virus, either by my videos or someone else's videos or talking to other Bitcoiners. Some people get interested in Bitcoin for its what people call jokingly its NGU technology, number go up technology. The more Bitcoin goes up, the more free advertising it gets, the wealthier Bitcoiners become, and the more they can do to spread Bitcoin and to pass laws that are friendly to Bitcoin. This is NGU technology right here. This is a log chart of Bitcoin since 2012. We can see that the recent dip is really nothing in the scheme of things, and it looks like we're about to take off here and go back up. This is NGU technology. Some people are drawn in by the dream of getting rich, and it's not just a dream. If you've been holding Bitcoin for any period of time, more than maybe 3 months, you have been getting rich from it, especially if you've been cost averaging in over the past year. So maybe you get interested in Bitcoin just because you're greedy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Bitcoin harnesses greed in the same way that capitalism harnesses greed, and it transmutes it, and it uses it for very beautiful things. Maybe you get interested not because you're greedy, but maybe because you have more social awareness or social conscience or an intellectual curiosity. You begin to ask, what is money? What do the banks do? Why do we need central banks? What do they actually do? How come I can never get ahead? How come wealth inequality keeps increasing? How come all these billionaires got so much richer during the pandemic and I didn't? Why did stocks skyrocket during a global pandemic when all these businesses were forced to be shut down by the government, many of which businesses are never coming back? People begin to wonder where money comes from and the money printers. And when they go down this rabbit hole, the only place you can ultimately arrive is Bitcoin. You're not going to exchange Uncle Sam's money for Uncle Charles Hoskinson's money or Uncle Vitalik's money. It's just too much like the fiat system. And when you begin to understand how money drives things, not just in the sense of political donations, but the entire system is built on this very corrupt form of money that can just be printed up by certain people and not by anyone else. And if you still think the politicians and central bankers care about your future, you are very young and naive, or you're older and you haven't been properly observing things. The way the economy has been stimulated is through increasing government spending, printing up money to fund this deficit spending. And this is one reason stocks have been skyrocketing. Bitcoin is a hedge against this. Bitcoin protects your hard-earned money and makes sure that the government cannot confiscate it, and make sure that the government cannot dilute your wealth by printing up more money for to be lent out to people who are close to the money printers. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.